Alrighty, so this is a quick comparison. I'll turn this off in a second. Of the BatleXP versus the Retroid Pocket Classic. And then let me just mute this. And so these two handhelds are two very portable, pocketable type of devices. Now they kind of fit that same market, but at different levels. So this is obviously the cheaper device. It does have thumbsticks, but there's an issue with those, and I'll get to that in a second. Let me turn on my lights here. I forgot to do so. And then the Pocket Classic, on the other hand, is a much more higher end device when it comes to, or at least medium, when it comes to these types of vertical gaming handhelds. So I got this in a trade, so I didn't necessarily get this with the 4x4 buttons. It's just like the Sega Dreamcast or whatever, not Dreamcast, Genesis style. And then this is neat because it is smaller, it is more pocketable. However, those thumbsticks don't actually work that well because they're mainly directional. They're not, X input, whatever the term is. So when you use them, instead of 4 directions, it's 8 directions. So it's still giving you an analog type of feel, but it's not actually doing a full 360 motion like you would on an Xbox controller or something like that. And I will say, taking advantage of the more powerful hardware isn't that great without having a thumbstick. So that is kind of an issue when it comes to playing those type of games. Now, I think that this handheld can go slightly up to PS1 and PSP, maybe a tiny bit of N64. I'm not exactly sure why N64 is harder to run than PSP sometimes, but it is from what I've been told. Whereas this one can play a lot more, I guess, 3D games like GameCube, upwards of maybe some Wii titles, not to mention PS2 and stuff like that. Now, when I play GameCube or PS2 games, I do like to make them widescreen. And so that's one reason why I like playing on the Pocket 5, but we're not doing a comparison of that today. So the Pocket 5 is really nice because you have that 16:9 display, and most games support the widescreen hacks. But there's some people out there who want that more traditional 4:3 experience, and that's what you're going to get more on something like this. I think this might be 3:2, which is better for a Game Boy Advance. But honestly, both of them were phenomenal when playing those types of games. And so being able to use these devices, I don't have the spec sheets, so I would definitely suggest a more technical analysis video of either handheld, in case you want to know the more details of like, hey, what is the specs on here? I think it's the RK something 366 or whatever the hell it's called. This model number is G350, so if you want to know what model this one is. And then with the Pocket Classic, I actually don't know what the CPU is in here. I know it's not as strong as like the actual Retroid Pocket handhelds, but I think that this does have a decent chip. And the actual build quality, I guess really the main reason why I'm making this video is to share with you how does it feel. And when I'm playing with the Pocket, not Pocket, but the BatleXP, the buttons are good. They're not great. I think that the actual click of these is a lot more like tactile on this side. And when it comes to the D-pad, the Pocket Classic definitely wins on that. But I would say this is not a slouch either. So the main issue is, like, do you need the thumbsticks or not? And I think that that is something that is a different issue. And then the screens, both of them are good. I think this one has a higher quality screen, probably higher resolution, especially since you're playing the more 3D games, you're going to need that. But I think that both have a pretty good pixel density, and the games actually look good. The color accuracy, they look good. I didn't necessarily notice much of a difference between the two. Maybe I should have looked a little bit closer, but I'm kind of glad I didn't because I want to enjoy this more. Because this goes at $40, whereas this goes for about $120, $140, depending on when you got it. And that could be a big difference for some people. And then there's other handhelds like the Tremie Brick or whatever, which is like the better version of this even. And I think that if you really like vertical handhelds, that would be kind of the way to go. But for me, it's more about the size and the pocketability. Also, since this is $40 compared to this $120, I'm much more careful with this. I'm not going to put this in my pocket and let it get scratched up by jeans, or put it in my backpack and let it get scratched up. This one, I'm going to still be careful with it because that's just how I am, but I'm not going to put this in a case. I would put this in a case. This, I could just toss into my backpack or toss it in my pocket and not have to worry that much because it's only $40. If you need to replace it, yes, it's annoying, but you can. Now, the last comparison I'm going to make between these two products, because there's not really a whole lot to talk about besides the fact that this can play a little bit more than this, is that the operating system is a big deal. This is Android, and when I started this up, I was actually very excited because I had to deal with the annoyances of this. And because I was dealing with Android, I was able to just sideload the APKs I already had on my flash drive, although I think I had some issues sourcing some of them onto here, like getting it onto the SD card and then getting them to load. But also, I don't want to use Google Play if I can help it. Maybe I just need to start getting used to Obtainium or something like that, or just find or get better up-to-date APKs or something like that. Because I think that with Retroid, they actually allow you to turn off the Google Play services, which is very good for, first off, privacy, but also for saving processing power, which is pretty needed when you're trying to run more harder demand games. This, on the other hand, comes with the BatleXP OS, and I actually couldn't get it to work. I don't know if it was my SD card, which is one of those things that can be a big issue, or because I ended up having to get it. The guy who I got this from, I had to go get his SD card that still had the OS on it because I had issues with installing it onto other SD cards that I had lying around. Even on my nicer ones, it wouldn't work. Whereas the crappy SD card that this came with, I guess that did work. I even tried ArcOS and DarkOS, and there was one other one, Muffin or whatever the hell it's called, where essentially it replaces the operating system on this device. And DarkOS is supposed to be even more efficient and a better interface, and I was really excited to use that one over the stock one because I wanted to squeeze out as much power as I could out of this. But since it wouldn't actually work, and I don't want to mess up the SD card that I managed to get on here, that is something I wanted to mention. One other detail is that there's actually 2 SD card slots in here, and one on this one. And why that's kind of an issue is that the operating system's working off of one of these SD cards, whereas you can have one dedicated fully to games. Although this one can't really play that many 3D consoles, so you're not going to have that much game size files that are going to be that needing of space. Especially since one of the major issues when it came to the operating systems that I did get to work, the operating system would work, but the partition for the game drive actually wouldn't work. And it kept just trying to do, I think, 1 gigabyte for the partition, even though if I had a 64 gig SD card, it would partition only 1 gigabyte for the games, and I couldn't expand it at all. And so having to deal with all that, it was annoying. And the tinkering problem of this is why I wanted to mention that in the video, because this just worked out of the box with Android. Yes, Android has more overhead and it's going to take more processing to run, but it worked. And I could just pop in some games and get it to work after installing some apps. This one, the apps were already basically on there. You might have to set up RetroArch, but you might have to do it on here too, depending if you like using RetroArch. I don't. But that is an option on here too. And really, all the emulators were kind of just already there. And so I could just get the games going and just kind of start off. I didn't have to install those, but the actual installation of the operating system was the issue. So it's kind of like, do you want to just do apps, or do you want to do the whole operating system plus a little bit of apps? And so that's about it. I'm going to make another video probably at some point about the BatleXP, but I'm actually going to be parting ways with the Pocket Classic. And so as much as I love it, and I think it's great, this is probably one of the last videos you'll see of it on the channel.